Brighton, since they've gone up to the Premier League, haven't beaten another side more than Manchester United. 8 times they've now beaten them. And let's be honest, it was pretty comfortable as well. And it's led Amorim to say that his side might be the worst in the history of Manchester United. A 6th home Premier League defeat of this season. Here's what Amorim said after the game.
To change, no matter what. And I know we can succeed, but we need to survive this moment because I'm not naive. And I know that we need to survive now. So we are being the worst team, maybe, in history of Manchester United. And I know that you want headlines, but I'm saying that because we have to acknowledge that and to change that. So here you go, your headlines.
Yeah, I mean, he's not bad for a headline, isn't it? Is he? Because it's not the first time he's buried his team. Do you think he's gone a bit too far there, Rory, by saying they're the worst in Manchester United history?
No, he hasn't gone too far. It's refreshing that somebody has finally told the truth about this crop of players. They've been indulged for far too long. Manchester United have normalised mediocrity for far too long, that somebody with that elite level mindset, somebody who sets the standards, somebody who demands the best from everyone around them, has come in and said, this is not good enough. This is the worst, man. That's true. You look at the forward options. You think of the history. You know, we're old enough, Olly, to fully understand, like, the brilliance. You know, sadly, Dennis Law recently died. We know what Manchester United are supposed to represent. And you look at the standards of that club at the moment, and they are just nowhere near where they are supposed to be. This is, factually, the worst Manchester United team of my lifetime. This is individually, if you look at the players, undoubtedly the worst. There are so many players in that squad that are not fit to wear the shirt. There are so many players in that squad that do not do the proud badge on their chest justice. That I think it's about time. But
it's it's very publicly honest, isn't it? You know, I'm sure that many Man United fans wouldn't mind him saying that to his team in the dressing room and making that clear to them. And like you say, that they're not fit at the moment to be pulling on that shirt and wearing that badge. But does it have to be so publicly honest?
Yes,
it's brutal though.
So what? So what? Why do we protect footballers as if they kind of need to be insulated from any sort of public criticism? We've had it for so long where managers have maybe taken the brunt for underperforming players. Eric Ten Hag, trust the process. We've had it all. At some point, someone needs to come out and say, these players are not doing it. They are not good enough. And a lot of these players were signed by Ten Hag. They're clearly not good enough. It was an average manager signing average players who often he had a pre-existing relationship with. Somebody needs to come in and set the standards and almost raise it to the ground before building it back up. And I think that Ruben Amorim, although it's kind of unvarnished, it's
quite
ugly,
extreme, isn't it?
Yeah, it's ugly. It's not sugar-coated at all. I think it's absolutely correct. Not only, by the way, for the players. I think that by extension, from what Amorim has said here, it's a swipe at the club. And Sir Jim Ratcliffe deserves this. Because since he's come in, he positions himself as a local lad, positions himself as a working-class local lad. And everything that he has done is so far removed from what the club should be doing.
What specifically do you think he's swiping
so prices. So price. For example, I think the prices from Sir Jim Ratcliffe. I heard an interview. I believe it was Andy Mitten.
But so do you think Amorim's swiping at all of this as well when he's saying this? Or is he? Surely he's just focusing on the football side.
No, because I think if you swipe at the players, if you say this is the worst crop of players that the club has ever had, it's impossible to say those words without at least acknowledging who signed these players. This is the worst crop of players that I've ever seen at this club. This is the worst crop of players this club has ever had. And somebody told me that it's not quite true. Apparently in 1934 they were worse. So that's what we're saying here. You can't say a comment as barbed and malicious as that without at least leaning into and suggesting that another question needs to be asked. The follow-up question would be, okay, if that's true, who the hell signed these players? And that's when the board come in.
Yeah. It's funny as well because me and you actually talked about this after the cup win against Arsenal. We were talking about already Amorim's comments being quite extreme and saying that his side are going to have to suffer. I mean, the amount of times he has said the word suffer must be absolutely ridiculous. You know, we were talking about pretty much burying his players after a lot of games. I think this is the most extreme he's gone, but it's funny because we noticed that actually that brought performances out of them. You know, they did well at Anfield, like I mentioned. They did well to knock Arsenal out of the cup as well. Is there a side of it that you think that as a manager he knows that actually sugarcoating it and being, mollycoddling these players isn't going to work.
No.
That to go out and publicly criticise them is the right thing to do to get performances out of them.
I think it has to happen. I think it has to happen. They've tried the other way. Also, I think it shows that Ruben Amorim cares. It shows that he is desperate to succeed in the job. And I think Ruben Amorim, since he's come in, has been a shining light there. I know they've been bad results. I know that there isn't a lot for them to celebrate, but they've been big results. But also, like, the culture change. This kind of comment, this kind of awareness, this kind of atom bomb dropped on Manchester United for us to discuss is part of the process of redefining who the club are. Because for far too long, it has been so underwhelming. And the other thing, by acknowledging it, the other implication, if Amorim says, this is the worst crop of players that the club have ever had, the implication is, give me some money to buy some good players. Because without them, there are no amount of tactical tweaks or personnel tweaks. Ruben Amorim cannot, via his own brilliance, make Rasmus Højlund capable of playing in the Premier League. Like, Rasmus Højlund is not a Premier League footballer. I don't care. He's just not. And we can have fairly kind conversations and generous conversations around Højlund, and we can start talking about the service that he gets and should he be given more service and how much of it is his fault. But basically, Rasmus Højlund is not good enough to play for Man United.
Yeah, and especially not at the moment. I think we knew that when he came in. He was far too young and far too inexperienced, in my opinion, to be leading that line. And when you actually think about the sum of money, the sums of money, actually, you should say plural, on some of these players. And already, once again, we're looking at a huge clear-out for Manchester United. You think about the Dan Ashworth situation as well. You talked about who signed these players. I mean, a few of them were sanctioned by him, including Joshua Zirkzee. And he's already left the club.
This is why Amorim is right. Because, of course. I mean, Casemiro's now cart horse, isn't he? Like, not disparaging to the player that he once was or the records that he has achieved. But today, Mason Mount, one of the worst signings of the Premier League era. Rasmus Højlund, just not good enough. Joshua Zirkzee is doing quite well at the moment. But you're not telling... This is a club that had Eric Cantona and Mark Hughes and Ruud van Nistelrooy and Wayne Rooney. You're not actually telling me that Joshua Zirkzee is now the requisite level. Or are you? Are we now redefining the club?
Well, they're 13th in the table, Rory. And they're 2 points above Tottenham, who just now, you said, aren't out of a relegation fight. I mean, listen, Ipswich are on 16, so Man United... it just becomes laughable when you talk about them in these kind of contexts, but they are 10 points clear of the drop. But with the current form and the performances that they're putting in, losing to clubs, Brighton have been good, but they're 9th. They shouldn't be going to Old Trafford and winning.
They shouldn't. You're absolutely
alongside
right.
A lot of clubs.
You're absolutely right.
And would you have them in that conversation?
No. Manchester United aren't. They're not in a relegation fight. They are too far away from it. They're definitely 3 worse teams in the league than Manchester United. But the fact that you can ask that, even with a slightly wry smile, and I answer it fairly professionally, is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
It's mad.
But I do believe that 95% of the problems at the club are board level. And the ridiculous way that they back Ten Hag. You look at Onana giving the ball away. That was Ten Hag's man. They spent a fortune on him. So I think that Ruben Amorim, coming in the way that he is, being aggressive, shooting from the hip, throwing his weight around, making big, bold statements that should have huge ramifications. Like, the ripples in the pond from Amorim saying, this is the worst team that Manchester United have ever had. The ramifications for that should be so huge. It should be a tsunami where everyone suddenly goes, right, these players need to be shocked into fulfilling their potential. And if you aren't good enough, if there is no potential, you're out the door, and the board need to back the ambition being demonstrated from the Manchester United bench. Yeah,
I would just say, though, he's gone pretty hard early on in his tenure. It could get worse from here. Not to sound like Mick McCarthy.
What's the alternative? What are you suggesting? You're suggesting, do you remember that Ratner thing?
Yeah.
Gerald Ratner?
Yeah.
Who basically said something along the lines of he had a jewellery brand and he said that he wouldn't wear any of that tat, and he basically finished his own brand. Yeah. This could be his moment for that.
Yeah, that's
he
what I'm saying.
Went, these players
he's gone a bit early, hasn't he?
Yeah, these players are no good.
Worse.
And they stopped playing for him. These players are no good, and they don't want to play for him anymore.
Yeah, I mean, he said that these players are in a relegation fight. He said time and time again they need to suffer. He's now saying they are literally the worst Man United side in history. As you point out, Rory, we can sit here as fans and say, listen, it's pretty much facts. He's not far off it. But you just think about the effect on those players. I'm just interested to see how far he goes next time around. They've got Rangers up next on Thursday in the Europa League.
Where is that?
It's at Manchester United.
Okay. I was going to say,
at the
because
moment, that doesn't
Ibrox,
matter. At the moment, no. But at the moment, it doesn't matter, does it? Really? Some of the home results they've had this season have been so poor. Fulham away, tough, which actually is a tough game. Fulham ahead of them in the table. Then they've got Palace at home and Leicester at home.
There's the 6 points they need to pull away.
And that's the thing. That's it's just crazy. Yeah. It's just absolutely crazy.
If you're a Man United fan, you're looking at your team, you're looking at Xerxes, you're looking at Anthony, you're looking at like half that back line, you're looking at the keeper, and you are dejected. But then I think
he's got to change keeper. He's got to change keeper.
At least my opinion on this, right? That I think that the manager doing this, the manager effectively pressing the self-destruct button to say that everything needs to be reconditioned. If I were a Man United fan, I'd like that. Mourinho would do that. Mourinho would do that. I'm talking Mourinho in his pomp, whatever you consider that to be. Mourinho 2010 would go, nah, they're not acceptable, and then look to build from there.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app, and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.